Hi, welcome to another Sporting Communities podcast. Sporting Communities are a community interest company. We are an ethical, non-for-profit organisation which services range from sports coaching, youth work, mentors and family support. We are a training academy delivering a range of qualifications, and we have art and play services. If this is the first time you've joined us, I'm James. I'm again joined by Mim and Ed today. So we'll just do a quick introduction so that if it is the first time you've listened, you can get to know us, and then we'll go through what we're going to cover today. So I'm James. I've been with the sporting community for just over a year, mainly go out into the community, helping out kids, putting on sporting sessions, and just trying to get them to take part and enjoy it, really. Ed?
Yeah, my name's Ed. I work for Sporting Communities as well. I'm a keen sportsman, love all different sports. I mainly play badminton and football myself. I also like going to the gym, staying fit and healthy, looking after myself. My other interests are mainly just spending time at home with family, friends, taking my dog out and chilling out really, and just watching TV, watching some films when I can. I also do some of the sports coaching for Sporting Communities as well. So getting out in the local communities, doing multi-sport sessions with all the kids there. And yeah, that's me really.
Fantastic. And Mim?
Hi, my name's Mim and I've been with the company for a year today.
Congratulations, Mim.
Thank you. I'm a youth engagement worker, specialising in the supporting strand, so just engaging with the communities and young people. My hobbies outside of work, I'm quite musical, I'm quite artistic. So yeah, that's me.
Great stuff. Thank you both. So this week we are going to touch on from where we finished last week. We're going to have a look at anything that's changed during the last week, how we feel about that, the current situation here still. The fact that we are obviously still in lockdown, we currently have no changes here, but just what we feel about the changes that are happening around the world now and how we feel we will cope when we come out of lockdown. So the first question I just wanted to ask you both was, obviously there's countries around the world now that are starting to lift their lockdown restrictions, or are starting to at least talk about when they're going to be lifted. How do we feel about it over here, as the fact that we haven't announced anything yet? Are we okay with that? Do we wish that we knew a little bit more? Starting with you, Ed, how do you feel? In particular, I know countries like Spain are talking about on the 4th of May, they're going to be lifting some of their restrictions. So how do you feel about them lifting theirs and the fact that we don't know anything here yet?
Yeah, it's interesting really. I'm just, me personally, I'm just trying to take it day by day, to be honest. I don't think the government are particularly handling it great. They're keeping kind of us in the dark, and it doesn't really fill me with a lot of confidence, just because I kind of get the impression that they don't really have much of a clue about what's going on. That's the impression they give off to me anyway. But in terms of like you said, Spain lifting their lockdown, I think they were talking about a 4-stage, doing it in 4 stages, each stage being 2 weeks each.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about 8 weeks there alone, just on to get to the 4th stage of the lifting it, I don't know about it in too much detail, but you're talking an extra 2 months there. I think if we kind of do anything similar, so following suit, then it's going to be another 2 months on top of, is it 2 weeks until ours is lifted, the 11th or 15th of May for us? Well, what they've said anyway. So I'm not filled with confidence, but just trying to take it a day at a time. I think that's all you can do for now.
Yeah, definitely. I think when we first initially went into lockdown, we were roughly around, I think, 2 weeks behind Spain and Italy. So it just kind of makes sense if they're kind of talking about releasing measures now and starting to let a few more people go out. I think, like you say, 2 weeks on from what they're talking about is probably realistic for us to be looking at the same kind of scenario, because we were 2 weeks behind them initially. So that would make sense. I think you're right there.
Yeah, I just think that I think it slowly seems to be getting better on the news, what they're reporting anyway, in terms of the critical reports and deaths. So hopefully now we kind of turn that first corner and on the up now. But again, we'll see. I think that more and more news is going to come out about the real kind of numbers. But again, I think it's important not to kind of get too involved with that and focus on yourself. That's something I've been trying to do, kind of take myself away from the bigger picture, although keeping in touch with it, but not focusing on it too much and keeping myself well and just sticking to the rules and staying safe.
Yeah, I must admit, touching on that, I only try to check the news a couple of times a day. So I like to check it in the morning to see what's happened. I like to check it around when they do their press conference around 5 o'clock. I don't watch it very often. I like to just check the news around that time. And then I'll probably check it at, say, 8, 9 o'clock as I'm starting to wind down for bed. And I try not to look at it too much in between because I find otherwise it can just consume you. Especially on days like today where it's chucking it down with rain. So you are stuck inside the house all day because even if you do go out to do your one exercise, you're going to get soaked. So it is difficult to stay away from it, but I think it's important that you try not to just divulge into too much of it because it just consumes you. Mim, what are your feelings about lockdown being lifted in other countries potentially and the situation as it is here?
Yeah, I mean, you guys covered quite a lot there. You went into a lot of depth. I agree with a lot of what you guys said. I think it's like you said, James, not sort of becoming too consumed in other people and what they're doing. Just take it day by day and step by step and sort of get ready to make plans when lockdown does lift, but also don't pin our hopes on a certain date because it might not be that date. So it's about not being hung up on that. And just going about our day-to-day life the way we have been doing, and what will be, will be.
I think that's a really good point, actually, about the date. I think potentially one of the reasons the government hasn't come out yet and said, right, on the 15th of May, for instance, this is what's going to happen. Because actually, if numbers were to get worse over the next week or so, that date then gets pushed back. And what then happens is people get in a frenzy because they've got it in their head that on that date, things are going to change. And if they don't then change, I think it's harder for people to adjust. So although I think it's difficult that we're not getting as much information potentially as what other countries are at the minute, I think actually it might be a good thing because, like you say, we're not going to be clinging on to a date that actually isn't realistic.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Great stuff. Thank you, guys. So just leading on from that, I've got a question for you both just to see what your opinions are. Just with regards to the longer that lockdown goes on for, do you think that people will be suffering due to the fact that lockdown is keeping going and it's extending and extending? Or do you think people will actually be adjusting to it and adjusting their lifestyle and potentially finding positive ways out of it? Mim, if we could start with you.
Yeah, so I think everyone will be dealing with lockdown differently. I think for many it is about adjusting and getting used to a sort of new routine and lifestyle and sticking to that routine. So it could be quite positive for a lot of people the longer it goes on because it's allowing them to get into that routine more. But it's understandable that for many it is difficult going long periods of time without seeing family and friends. But I think it's about focusing on the positives. And like we touched on a couple of weeks ago, we're lucky that we're in a time where we have got things like FaceTime so that we can sort of utilise those things to keep in touch with people. But it's also about not becoming dependent on those things so that when lockdown does lift, we are actually going and seeing people and not just stuck in our routine in a bit of a rut of just FaceTiming.
Yeah, definitely. Are you FaceTiming many people yourself, or?
I am, yeah, but I've got plans to sort of, when lockdown lifts, go and see them because it could be quite easy to get into that routine of just FaceTiming people and seeing it as a meet-up and things, which is obviously the only thing we can do at the minute, but it's important that we do sort of rekindle those meetings with people once lockdown does lift, because I think for many people it could be quite an anxious thing going out and seeing people again and socialising.
Yeah, especially if we don't quite know what the situation is worldwide with regards to the virus still, because there are going to be people who are still scared to go out. So I think, like you say, in setting them sort of meetings up and everything like that with people, I think that's really important, that we don't just become dependent on the technology, because otherwise, like you say, we're going to be scared to go out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people as well, people that may struggle with social anxiety and things like that at the minute, it's quite a big thing for them. So when we do come out of lockdown again, it's about sort of regaining them skills to be able to socialise and interact with people, because it has been such a long time since we've been able to do that, really.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. Ed, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Mim covered pretty much everything. I think, like she said, it just takes time to adjust to the, like, no one likes change. So I think that when obviously something as big as lockdown happens, it's a massive change for some people, well, for most people, and people generally don't like change. So when something gets kind of rocked in their world, it's huge. It's like, how do I react? What do I do? Panic. So I think as time goes on, I think you'll find that people do tend to get better and adjust to the situation. It just takes time. In terms of those that are suffering, though, I do feel that it's not a case of just adjusting for them. They need to go out and find that extra bit of support if they're not already being supported, just because it depends on the individual how they react, and some people will react much better, some people will take longer to adjust than others. So the ones that are suffering, I do think they definitely do need that support, because I don't think it's something that just gets better in time and they don't just adjust as easy.
Just
Yeah, go on,
touching on
Min.
that,
Sorry.
I think it's so important now, especially for those that are struggling, to maintain a routine, because once lockdown lifts, things will start to go back to normal into those old routines. So if we've been out of a routine for a certain period of time, it will be really difficult to adjust to a routine again. So I think it is so important to stick to some form of routine at the minute, else that could be another massive change in itself, as well as coming out of lockdown. I know that routines will be different anyway, but having some form of routine will make that transition less difficult.
I mean, I know from personal experience, I've gone from working full-time to being full-time in my house with not a lot to do. And it took me a good couple of weeks, really, to get used to the sort of new normal. When I do go back to work, eventually, I know that I will have to go straight back into that role, and I'll need to be straight back into working full-time and getting up at a regular time and going in and doing my hours. And right now, for me, thinking about doing that, it just feels strange to even think about, because I've almost got used to my new normal of being at home. I've set myself my routine at home, and I think that's such a good point that you've just made, Min. You have to do it, because actually, if you get out of a complete routine and you're just getting up at whatever time and you're going to bed at whatever time, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, when you do eventually go back to work, you're going to find it's so much harder to get back into that routine, because you've just completely broken it all.
Yeah, I want to touch on that actually, James. Yeah, it's a great point, because I think we mentioned it in a previous podcast that it's really important that when lockdown does finish, we don't just stop supporting the people that needed support, because as you've both just mentioned, when lockdown gets lifted, there's going to be another change. So people might have just adjusted to the self-isolation, staying indoors, and then all of a sudden it's then going to get lifted. Then so that's another massive change of trying to go back to the normal, which, it won't happen straight away. But then you've got all sorts of things like another peak in the virus happening. So then we've potentially still got another lockdown that might get introduced later on. So there's going to be constant changes in the near future. So I think
definitely,
it's really important that we don't just stop supporting each other, and especially the people that need that support, when all of a sudden we think lockdown then is just getting lifted and everything goes back to normal, because that won't be the case.
Yeah, I think as hard as it is to go from working full-time to suddenly being locked in your house every day, it's just as hard to go from being locked in your house every day to going back to work full-time, because whichever way you look at it, you're changing the whole way you're living your life.
Yeah.
So it's going to be just as important, as you say, to make sure that we're there for people and supporting people when everyone does go back to work and does go back to living what we deem normal lives, because it may not actually work out like that. And I think the whole world is going to have to adjust to the new normal, as they keep saying.
Well, yeah, imagine if all of a sudden you get the clear to go back to work, and then 2 weeks later it's another lockdown, and we're like, sorry, right, everyone back indoors, self-isolation again. It's going to be hectic. So I think it's even more important that we stick to the guidelines, stay indoors, keep that distance from each other, and any new ones that they introduce as lockdown gets lifted.
Yeah, 100%. Great stuff. Thank you both. So one point that I wanted to raise on the podcast this week is just about the news and my personal opinion is that it's quite negative. I don't think we always get the positive stories that actually come out of this. I know that on a Thursday, we're all out clapping for the NHS and all of the key workers, which in my opinion is great. And I think it is something, as I said last week, that I think we should continue to do, because we shouldn't forget about all these people that have got us through this pandemic. But for me, talking about the fact that we could have locked down earlier, talking about the fact of when is it all going to end and everything like that, I just feel that there's a negative connotation that comes with it, and it's almost like it doesn't matter the fact that we could have locked down earlier because we didn't. And let's try and focus on the positives that are coming out of it and all the hard work that our people are putting in, rather than the negative sides that come with that. I don't know how you two feel about that, but I just feel like the news is at times overly negative, and that's why I try to steer away from it, because if I watch it, I find that I just go into a negative mindset. I don't know if you two feel the same or whether you feel different, but I'd just be interested to know, really.
I agree. I think that it should be focusing more on the positives, because there are a lot of positives that have come and will come from this. Bringing communities together, recognising the good of the NHS and key workers. And I think we need to be focusing a lot more on those things. So I totally agree with you there, James.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. I think that a country that have done that, I think, is Sweden. So they didn't really introduce hardly any lockdown in their country, and I don't think they kind of I'm not saying this is right, but they didn't really report too much on the like any of the negative stories that were coming out. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying we seem to have taken the almost opposite approach with it, and I don't think it's very good, especially in times like this of panic and insecurity, anxiety, that constant negative news is good at all. And I think that the only positive thing that has come out of it, or that I watch when I watch the news, that is the NHS and the clapping.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely some more, I mean, on Facebook and social media, I do find more positive stories and funny kind of things to laugh about, rather than get upset about or worried about watching the news. So I would say try and find, if you do find yourself watching the news quite a lot, try and find other means of content to kind of...
I know what you're trying to say. Try to find another way to get that element to yourself.
Like you said, sorry, not just maybe a couple of times a day just to keep on track of what's going on, but no more.
Yeah, I just feel personally that, yes, in my opinion, we could have done things differently, but there is no point in slating the government now and talking about that, because actually it doesn't help the situation. I think it's so important that as a country we continue to come together and support each other and do all of the things that actually make us feel better, rather than talking about things that are only going to make us feel worse.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe when it's all said and done and the worst is over, it's something that, the people that want to can come back to that, questioning the government's decisions at a later stage. But I think at the minute, it should be all hands on deck in terms of positivity, positive energy, and kind of keeping everyone's hopes up high and keeping everyone going, I think.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you. Fab. So if this is your first time of listening to us, we're just going to finish off just with a few quick tips just to help keep anxiety low if you are feeling stressed during this time. So over to you, Mim, just with a few quick tips of just how we can keep anxiety low.
Yeah, so I think it's about focusing on the things that we enjoy and not becoming too hung up on the news, making sure that we are staying in touch with our loved ones, having those conversations with them, and also being open about if you are having an anxious day or a down day, because it might be that someone else is as well, so you might be able to talk through that together. It may be that you can bring someone else's spirits up and vice versa, just by having those conversations and doing things that we enjoy.
Yeah, great stuff. Anything you'd like to add, Ed?
In terms of just tips on coping and trying to reduce anxiety, and I'd say just again what we've mentioned previously. So trying to stick to a routine. Maybe that might be writing down a bit of a plan of your day, what time you want to get up, what time your meals are, setting aside time, that work-life balance if you are working or at school, not focusing too much or getting down about the little things. So if you're struggling with a bit of work, there's always someone there to help you. Our coaches are on social media chats, and you can always comment if you're struggling or want to ask us something. So there's always someone there that will be there to help you if you need that. Get plenty of sleep. So make sure you get enough sleep. Don't stay up worrying about certain things. Again, if you are, there's always someone there to help get things off your mind. Exercise. Plenty of exercise if you can. I know some people are stuck in their homes. You might not have a garden. That's absolutely fine. Check out our social media page where Mike and Shaq have put some home workouts on. So stuff that you can do in really small spaces. You only need like, I don't know, really small bedroom or in your lounge, something like that. No equipment. Or if you do have some, they've got some different workouts there that you can kind of copy and try out. So plenty of exercise that will really make you feel better. Try and have as good as a diet as possible. So make sure you're eating plenty of fruit and vegetables, and then maybe just set aside time for something that you enjoy doing, whether that's watching a comedy, something that will make you laugh and smile, listen to some music that you enjoy, some time where you can just chill out and do something that you like.
It's about being proactive in all of this as well. So rather than sort of, because it's easy to sort of be in that down mood and sit and do nothing with your day, and it is easy to do that. I've done it myself. So it's about being proactive and thinking, actually, what can I do to make my mood improve today? What can I do to fill my time?
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
100%, I agree. It's quite difficult to keep finding things to do, because when you can't go out, there's only so many times you can clean your house and do a workout. I mean, you can't do that every minute of every day. So I think it is hard, but like I said, just set aside a bit of time to do the things you like, and like Mims just said, to try your best to stay proactive. Whether that is something as watching a film just to take your mind off kind of the current situation. When we say proactive, it doesn't mean doing a workout for 5 hours a day. It's not something like that, but it's just something that will take your mind off the situation or any of your worries.
Perfect. Thank you both. Also, just to mention, if anybody listening wants to get involved with the podcast or has any questions they want us to answer during the podcast, if you just get in touch with us via the Sporting Communities page, either through the messenger or just coming on and commenting on the actual podcast itself, and we'll get in touch with you to make that happen for you. So thank you for listening again, everyone. We hope you have a good week, and we hope you'll tune in again next week to listen again. All right, thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.